And welcome back into a brand new episode of Tribal Council Chat. As always, we're your hosts. My name is Bruce Heller,
And my name's Brett Parnell.
and let's dive in. So, do you want to tell the audience about our super cool episode we have this week, Brett?
Sure, absolutely. So we are, as we've mentioned, back in off-season mode for really only about another month. You look at the calendar and go, probably this time next month, we're gonna be doing another fantasy draft, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But today we are going to talk about the one of the most popular seasons of the teens in Survivor, and that's Survivor Cook Islands.
Yes, we love this season. And I say we, I mean Survivor fans as a whole love this season.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of underrated in a way. It doesn't get talked about as much as I feel like it deserves, but it's still very well known season. Introduced us, I'll say, well, four very well known Survivor players. Three of them went on to play two more times after this.
Yep.
So one and the fourth one came back on season 40. So very iconic season, very underrated, like I said, but I love it. It's fantastic.
Oh, I do as well. Definitely in my top 10 seasons, probably.
I let me find my season rankings I did. Last time I did this was in December of 22, I think. So there's been a few seasons since then, but I had Cook Islands as my eighth favorite season.
Nice.
And none of the seasons that have happened since then would be that hot. I think 42 or 43 would have been the last season when I did this.
Nice.
So none of 45, 44, 45, 46, or 47 are in my top seven. So,
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't know. I couldn't find a list of rankings. I haven't done one online in a really long time, but it's
yeah.
definitely in my top 10 somewhere.
I just remember when I did it because it was when I was in Kentucky on my Christmas break, my first year at Central Christian College. So I with the Snapchat app, I can go through my camera roll by like month and year, so I can get to it easily. But
Oh, nice.
it's been a little while since I did that. So where are we starting here?
Let's start off on day one. This season is, how do I put this? I remember when it was about to start, like the week before the premiere, and it was all over the media for the controversial racially divided tribes twist.
Before we dive into that, did we want to do cast first? I forget what we decided.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, well, I mean, we've texted about episode structure like twice, so I wasn't sure what we
Yeah.
decided. We tossed around the idea of doing cast first, but I mean, you look at. I take that back. I said four people that come back. Five. I forgot about Ozzy.
Oh,
So
who did I forget about then? Because
the
I was counting
four,
Ozzy.
the four in my head at the time were Parv, who I have Parv's Cook Islands cast picture here autographed that I bought
Nice.
online 2 summers ago for charity, I think. Parv, Penner, Candace comes back twice.
Oh, Candace, that's who I forgot about.
Yule comes back one more time. Ozzy comes back 16, three more times after this. So
Yeah.
four Survivor legends and one Candace came out of this season.
Who I mean, I'm
I
on
don't know what to do
episode
with her.
who I'm on episode one, but when we get to episode two, she's gonna make herself a legendary player in the game without even doing anything.
Fair enough. And like, I'm not her biggest fan, but she's an iconic character in Survivor history. She, her second time she plays is on like the most iconic season. That's like the consensus favorite season.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not her biggest fan, but she's certainly an iconic, memorable character. But you look at the one-time players from this season too. Cowboys super entertaining.
Oh yeah.
Billy Garcia has one of the
Most infamous
funniest
moments in the show.
funniest moments in show history, not trying to be funny, but funny because it's like the least self-aware anyone has ever been in the history of the show.
Yeah.
Which is impressive because Russell Hantz and Rome Cooney have both been on this show. And Billy Garcia managed to have a really funny moment that was less self-aware than anything either of those two have done,
Yep.
which is impressive. But I'm trying to think. You've got, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the cast. Where do you? And it gives us Parv for the first time, who is a Mount Rushmore player in the game, and in both of our opinions, the best that has ever played the game,
Yep.
gameplay wise.
So yeah, my overall opinions, a lot of what you said. So many great characters in this season. Parv, Jonathan, Ozzy. Ewell is probably one of the greatest strategists of all time to play the game. Parvati is one of the greatest players of all time in other seasons, but she's really just getting her footing here. That being said, if you go back and watch some clips, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but even though Parv is playing the character that's like the young, attractive college girl, she shows signs specifically with how she interacts with like a JP on someone who can really play this game.
Yeah, she does. Like, and we really don't see her blossom into who we as fans think of her as until her second season, I'd say.
Yeah.
We see some signs of that in Cook Islands, but she's mostly the like young, flirty, sexy college, fresh out of college girl archetype in this season. But it's even though she's not the player she becomes yet, it's still the season that introduces us as fans to one of the four most legendary figures the game has ever seen. And then,
Yeah.
and
And
I'd
then
say
like you
it's a
say,
minority opinion, but someone who, in the opinion, but in a decent number of people's opinions, is the greatest of all time. Like I said,
yeah.
I
And
don't think
then like
that's
you
a
say though too, there's a lot of interesting characters again who we don't think of because they maybe haven't played again, but Cowboy was a great character from day one. Christina was a good character. Jenny was a good character. Nate. So there was lots of talent down the line of the season too, not just the players that say won the game or came back two and three times.
yeah, and we'll get to Cowboy a little bit in the when we get to the pre-merge section of this game. But he certainly has a few memorable moments. One, couple in my mind, one good, one bad. But
Yeah,
it's yeah, it's just fantastic cats. And like you said, the because there's five players that are returning players and big names, the one timers like a Nate, like a Cowboy get lost. I'll throw
yeah.
Adam in there, even though I kind of wasn't the biggest fan of how he was towards Jonathan. For
Who?
Adam, is that his
Adam. Yeah,
the guy that was with Candace?
yeah. No, I know who you mean. Your
Okay.
phone just cut out for a second.
Oh, weird. But yeah, just fantastic cast. And so, you want to get back into where you were leading us with the opening twist?
Yeah. So relatively controversial, probably still to this day in the survivor community, but especially at the time. I remember panels at the time debating whether this twist was a good step forward for reality television or whether it was too controversial on CNN and CBC News up here in Canada and whatnot, as opposed to just Survivor and talking about reality. But we have four tribes of five players start. So it's our first season with 20 castaways. And the tribes are divided by ethnicity.
Yes. And I'm trying to look at it. This was filmed in 2006. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's controversial twist then. It's still one that gets talked about now. I will say this, there's 0% chance this would happen in a
Yeah.
season now. And probably from about 2007 or 8 forward, there's no chance this was going to happen. I'm
Yeah,
surprised
there's no
it
chance
happened
it would
in
happen
'06.
now. That being said, when you actually watch it play out, the fact that the swap was so early in the season, I actually didn't mind it.
Yeah, they swapped it, what, like the second episode, I
The
think?
third episode,
Third up.
after Seiko and Billy went home.
Yeah, so it's
So
not.
it was not like you had necessarily tribes competing for very long against people of other ethnic backgrounds. They were just getting to the beach and being like, you get those moments where Parvati is asking, is this okay? I'm not quite sure. And where most of the Asian American tribe is taking it well, but more serious. Meanwhile, Cowboy is using the chance that he's only around people of his own ethnicity to crack jokes about themselves and offending other people on the tribe. And um
That was one of the two cowboy moments in my head when I said one negative for him and one positive is kind of getting himself, making himself a target, getting himself on bad footing with his tribe,
yeah.
making a bunch of Asian jokes in a group full of Asian people.
And then like Ozzy is really, as we see this season, embracing the fact that he can be on primetime television and show a primetime American audience what he defines as what is a Mexican American, as he says at Final Tribal Council.
Do you, and part of the early stuff with the Hispanic tribe was we saw, and why Billy goes home is we saw a few people. Ozzy led the charge on this, though, of just kind of thinking Billy was lazy or not working around camp enough. Do you think this opening twist kind of played into why they were so annoyed by that? Is they maybe there was this thought that he was making them like making their people look that
I
way?
I don't think so. It's all. I mean, anything's possible. I think it's. I mean, we've just seen that with certain people across the show. If I go to just a second, I'm pulling up a cast list. But like, if you go and look at, say, Shamar from Karamoan, I think it's just that people who tend to lie around and tell other cast members what to do put a target on themselves because no one wants to put up with that.
Yeah,
Reem
that's
was kind
fair.
of in the same position in Edge of Extinction. BB in Borneo.
Yeah.
So
And to be fair to Billy, he wasn't even lying around and telling people what to do, barking orders. He was just laying around. I don't know if that's better
yeah,
or worse, but
but I get the sense that that's the thing is it doesn't really matter what the season is, what the twist is, how many cast members are there. I've heard so many players say if you make yourself an easy person to vote out, then anybody is going to get rid of you because they just want to keep themselves in the game. It's that simple. And when you go to your third, fourth tribal council, everybody really is in different alliances. But when you go to your first tribal council, you don't know anybody unless it's a returning player season. It's next to impossible to trust anyone when you've just met them. And you're kind of just sitting there and going, I just need to make it till tomorrow.
yeah, for
Because
sure.
even if the person that's your number one gets voted out, who cares? You've been number one for what, 6 hours? You'll find a new number one.
Yeah. I mean, look at 47. Andy and John were super close early
Yeah,
on. John goes home and Andy still goes to fifth place.
exactly.
So, yeah, fifth place. So,
Look
and
at,
I will say before we dive into the pre-merge because I think we're there on
yeah,
the opening twist, you mentioned the Parvati quote. I had that in my notes too of her saying, "Is this kosher?"
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So, what stuck out to you from the pre-merge?
So from the pre-merge, we talked about the twist. Um, we going past that, I guess we kind of hinted at it, but after Sekou is the first person to be voted out, and he was a fun character. I would have loved to see Sekou last longer.
Yeah,
But after that, we see Billy with his infamous challenge moment, which we already kind of hinted at, and then we'll get to the swap right after this. But
yeah,
it seems to be a complete misunderstanding where Candace socially says, "We love you" to Billy, as in, don't feel so bad that you just lost the challenge.
yeah.
And he interpreted that to mean she was attracted to him.
And by the way, she only said that because when they lost, Billy sat there and looked at her and I think Candace and Parv and said, "Well, I'm gone."
Yeah, that was exactly what he said.
So they were just trying to console him because he brought it up first.
Yeah.
He'd be an awesome person to get on this show, by the way.
Yeah, that would be great.
But yeah, just him saying at Tribal, second episode, I'm paraphrasing. I'd love to quote this directly. I can't off the top of my head. I forgot to write it down. But like, I may not have won the game, but I've won my prize that's even better or something. I've fallen in love. And he says to
And the look on Jeff Probst's face here is probably better than any Probst facial expression we get in the entire franchise.
if I were to get a sticker of Probst of any moment from the show, it would be his face when they're like, can, Cand, and the phrase Candace from Railroad Tribe is still how she's known as all these years,
Yeah.
18 years later, I think. Cut. Oh my gosh, 2006 was 8 years ago. I remember 2000. Let's not go too deep down the I feel old rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's not do that. Because
I
if you feel old, I feel
I
older.
was I was about to say I'm the youngest co-host on this show, so but like she's still it's called Candace from Railroad Tribe because Billy does his whole spiel that sounds like a monologue from a romantic comedy movie, and Probst makes his face that we will have to put on our social medias this week,
Yeah.
and he goes Candace from Railroad Tribe, and there's that pause there, and the way he says it, if you sounds like if you're typing it, you put about 7 question marks on it.
Yes.
Like just fantastic moment, iconic moment in Survivor history. I kind of feel bad for the guy that he's still getting like laughed at about that moment all these years later, but I mean,
I mean, hey, he was a second boot, and he's probably one of the most memorable pre-mergers of all time that every Survivor fan knows who he is.
and I think he interacts with fans online. So
I
like
believe so.
he's taking it in good fun. I don't
Yeah.
know that I'd be able if I had made that big of a blunder. I don't know that I'd be able to take it that well.
Fair.
But no, yeah. And I will say I'm not the biggest Ozzy fan, mostly because of 16 and 23. Yes. Sorry, I have a hockey game going on my phone. I am paying attention fully. I just saw the little goal lights light up is the only reason that happened. But it's this is the most digestible version of Ozzy to me, I think. Like it's the one that I don't hate.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And to be fair,
Um,
he's on Game Changers, but he's not it doesn't feel like he is. He doesn't get a ton of like story or edit on that season, I don't feel like compared to his other seasons. I'm just
yeah.
really indifferent towards him on Game Changers. But I honestly do kind of like him on Cook Islands.
Yeah, I like Ozzy on Cook Islands, and I'm sure we'll get
Micronesia, he's really arrogant and
yeah.
and on South Pacific, he might be worse because he's arrogant and he's condescending in that one. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but this is
Um,
the most digestible version of him for sure.
I think this one he was great. Really kind of looking at the history of the show up until this point, I guess a little you could say make a case for like Terry or Tom, but we didn't really have an Ozzy character really on the show at this point in time.
What do you mean by Ozzy character? Do you just
Like
mean
someone who was just physical game all the way through.
Colby?
I guess, but Colby understood how to play Survivor.
His game was 90% physical, though. It was in camp, it was putting his big flag on the shelter, and it was
But he
all the
also,
nudity.
like we talked to Tina last week, built those bonds with her and decided to strategically blindside Mitchell and therefore deceive Jerry and Amber at the same time.
That's true. So you're talking about just like over.
Ozzy is just like, I will be the greatest Survivor player ever by winning challenges, and that's all this game really matters.
I don't think I'd put Tom in that category then, though, because
I
he
don't think I
kind of
wouldn't
fits
either.
the.
That that's what I'm saying. I'm
Okay.
my point is he was really the first.
Yeah,
So he Ozzy was I see why he was on Game Changers. He was changing the game to a strategy that didn't really work.
yeah. And I'm not saying Game Changers was a good cast because it was still incredibly random, but I think that gets misunderstood by a lot of people that criticize the cast. Game Changers isn't people that have changed the game. It's the way I understood the way he described it in the premiere was people that are willing to make big moves and change the game and like flip the game
Yeah,
on its head. So many people look at the cast and be like, "Oh, what did this person do to change the game? Why are they there?" But like, it's not game changers as in people that have changed the game.
yeah, exactly. So
Haley
for
and Kayla being on that cast is still completely random, and I don't. Neither one of them fit either definition. But
so for episode 3, most of it's kind of surrounding the whole incident that we had with Billy before, but we get the swap here.
we
What's your
do.
thoughts of this swap?
Let me pull up. I have the Wikipedia page pulled up in another tab other than Zoom. So we go down to two ties. Try. We had Aitutaki, Manihiki, Puka Puka, and Raro Tongan. We now just have I2 and Raro.
That's right.
And
The two
so,
names that get well known and recognized with this season.
yes.
Hiki and Puka tribes kind of have been the two most forgotten tribes in the history of Survivor.
Yeah, true. But yeah, we see someone like Christina that goes from I2 to Raro. We see someone like Jessica that goes from Raro to I2. We really don't have a ton of people that stay on their tribe. Ozzy stays on I2. I don't think we have anyone that was on Raro stay on Raro. Maybe. Okay. No, we did. Parvati and Adam.
Yeah,
But we had a lot of switching around here, even with the two tribes that still existed. I mean,
we did.
Candace and Penner both go from Raro to I2. So just very interesting swap because
Yeah,
every now
I
and then
guess
we'll get a swap where not much changes other than like a couple people. This was not that.
I guess the thing that stuck out to me here was right when we see them, the two tribes go back to camp, and specifically I2. And we see how, I guess, going back to the twist, that we're getting a sense kind of exactly the way that we see in our culture today in two diverse societies, whether we be on your side of the border or mine, that um, not everybody within, say, one cultural community is necessarily the same. Different people have different interests, have different passions in life, have different ways of expressing themselves.
Yeah.
And that gives us a moment that I just love in this episode. where you can tell in episode one, Cowboy feels on the outside and saying that he doesn't really interact with members of the Asian ethnic community, despite him being Vietnamese. And Jessica seems to be on the outs of the Caucasian community in her tribe, as she's a roller derby participant and is dresses differently and is heavily tattooed. And what we get here is these two individuals from different tribes instantly connect. And they've both found someone who they can identify with now that we're a mixed group, which I loved.
Yeah, and I had to look up Jessica for a second because I don't think they ever call her that on the show other than introduction because she goes by Flicka for some reason.
Yes,
And
I
I'd
think
love
that's
to
her
know where
roller
that
derby
nickname.
name.
I'd love to know where that nickname comes from.
It was her roller derby name that she
Okay,
competed under.
that's right. I forgot about that. But she is a really interesting character too. I forgot to list her among the one-timers,
Yeah,
but she's somebody that Penner has a really funny confessional on at some point of trying to figure out what page she's on or trying to get her on the same page as him and it just being difficult to figure her out because she's all over the place.
yeah. That was interesting. Where you do get those two mixes because I think she was really on the original railroad on the outs of that tribe,
Yeah,
but they never really had to vote somebody off, so she was able to survive a few weeks.
yeah. So,
All right.
and that leads us to another iconic moment from this season after, still in the pre merge, but after the swap that you mentioned Candace gets a lot of fame from, which
What?
is the mutiny.
Oh, I'm not anywhere close to being there yet. I have a
Okay.
couple things I want to bring up.
Yeah,
I
keep
want to
going.
go to I want to go to episode 4. And well, I guess there's two things right in this episode, but the first is we see a different side of Cowboy that he clearly knew was always there. But when Cowboy both, well, I guess we see a few new sides of him, but both thinks he's that kid, as he says, who thinks he can do anything and tries to climb a tree, only to both not successfully climb the tree and knock a live bird egg out of the nest.
Oh gosh, I forgot about that. Oh my gosh.
And then Cowboy goes from the scene where he's like, "Oh, I'm on Survivor and I'm used to being in the wilderness and I can accomplish anything," to really having an emotional side when he realizes he injured a baby bird that was just born that day.
Yeah. He wasn't around super long, but man,
No,
Cowboy was just on a rocket on this trip on Survivor, dude. Like we got right off the bat, he's the guy making Asian jokes in a tribe full of Asians and not going over well. We have trying to climb a tree and not being able to climb a tree and knocking an egg out of a tree. Later on, and I don't know why I was almost about to go to the mutiny. There is so much more to talk about before then, but I don't remember
yeah,
this
I have a
episode.
Cowboy moment, I have a Puff moment, I have a Christina moment. Then I want to get to the mutiny.
Yeah, well, there's another. I don't remember what episode it is. And I'm guessing I have two cowboy moments. This is I don't know which one is the one you're thinking of, but one of them is, hey, let's as a tribe go on this fun hike, and accidentally stumbling into the other tribe's island and camp,
Yeah.
which I haven't seen before. Well,
After,
Guatemala sort of didn't. With Guatemala, one of the tribes had a pool.
yeah,
For someone's birthday, they invited the other tribe over
Danny.
or something like that.
I've heard that after both the pool party for Danny's birthday and then the this incident with Cowboy, that's when production started controlling how far away from camp the players could go.
Which the pool party thing was on purpose. This thing with Cowboy and this hike he's leading his tribe on seemed like a complete accident,
Yeah,
which is just hysterical.
it was. The next thing I wanted to get into was Parvati. And I hinted at this at the beginning of the episode, but where I think that we get the sense that Parv is has the mindset to be a great player in the game, even if that's not the archetype that she's being edited for in this season. And that's, I think, one of the smartest things really ever done in Survivor. When Parvati is a young girl getting bossed around by JP, who thinks he's in control of the tribe. And instead of fighting with him, because this isn't the challenge, Parvati just has the mindset to say, JP wants to be the king of the tribe, let him be the king of the tribe, and we'll vote him out.
Yeah.
I think that's shows that she is far beyond being 21 in the game. And really, if you watch episode 4 of Cook Islands, watching her win the game a year and a half later shouldn't surprise anybody.
No. I mean, I would still argue it was surprising because, like, this was a really smart moment. But overall, the player she was in Cook Islands and the player she was in Micro are two different people
Oh yeah,
and two
but
different levels of player.
she also had power in Micronesia.
Yeah.
She had really no control here.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a really smart moment, and that doesn't get talked about a ton. That's kind of an under the radar moment.
Yeah,
And it's a moment we see from a lot of people after that, and a few times before it, to be fair. But well, this person thinks they're in charge. Just let them think that, and then they make themselves a target. So
exactly. So at this point too, something that we'll talk about in a minute in more detail because it comes up, but we see Yule get sent to Exile Island, and it's really the first moment of where we see how smart Yule is as a player because Yule just deciphers those clues perfectly and comes up with the second, I guess third hidden immunity idol, second on Exile Island. And this one, just like Terry's idol, is a super idol as we would call it today.
yeah, and it was after this season that they decided the Super Idol was too powerful and kind of broken, and they stopped having idols be super idols.
Yeah, and started having a crap ton of them.
Which we see the Super Idol come back in 28 and 32, but neither one gets played. So,
Yeah,
and cool moment with this idol with Yule is at the auction, it kind of becomes a topic of conversation when Candace gets sent, and we'll get to this with the
yeah,
auction.
we'll get to the auction because I
But
want to
Yule
talk
has a
about.
great moment with his idol at the auction. So that came into my head when you were talking about Yule's
Oh,
idol.
excellent. We'll make sure to bring up the auction when it comes.
I forgot that
But
was later after the mutiny. I was thinking it was before for a second, but it's
no
not.
problem. Nope, we're not Survivor Thailand quite anymore.
Aw.
Says no one ever.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I want to come up with, we already talked a little bit about Survivor Game Changers, which is funny. Say what you want right before he goes home here. Is Cowboy the biggest game changer in the history of Survivor
I don't
with
know if
Plan
I'd
Voodoo?
say I don't know if I'd say
Because
history of Survivor, but inventing the concept of the split vote is huge.
and it's still going on almost every week now.
Yeah.
People forget that what comes from Cowboy.
Without Cowboy inventing the split vote, there would be no Operation Italy because that hinged on getting the majority to split.
Exactly. So I mean, Cowboy is probably the most influential first pre-merge brute in the history of this show.
Yeah, maybe. But they didn't listen to him. They didn't do it, which is crazy.
Yeah. But the fact that just the way he explains it is perfect. That's just like, especially where we've already seen Cowboy being on the outs of his tribe and using traditional Vietnamese medicine to cure people's headaches and starting a fire in challenges by jumping around and waving the coconut husk through the air, and all of the sudden, boom, it ignites like magic. Um,
Forgot about that.
it's like, once again, Cowboy just has these ideas that he goes, I had a dream about how to defeat the hidden immunity idol. And it's like, this is genius.
It's genius, but because it's him, people didn't want to listen
That's
and take
it.
it seriously.
No one wanted to listen to him in anything. I've heard through people online that unfortunately Cowboy is not living in the United States anymore. But God, if they were able to find him, get him on 50.
That would be get him on our show.
Yeah.
Get him and Billy on the same episode of our show together.
Well, hey, I've heard that other tourists have met him. If I randomly come across Cowboy in Cambodia this summer, which is where I hear he's living, I will ask him to come on the show.
But yeah,
Because I heard he owns his own business near the Angkor Wat temples, but I don't know how accurate that is anymore.
him inventing the concept of a split vote and it being completely ignored, but after him becoming a huge part of the fabric of the game is just wild.
Yeah.
And like his time on this show just kind of feels like a fever dream to me because it's just so like the fact that waving around coconut husks in the air and they just light is
And why
something I
has
forgot about because there's so much crazy stuff with this dude is awesome.
nobody else done it since, like in a fire making challenge?
I don't know, but Cowboy's my favorite. He's my favorite pre-merger of this season because there's just so much random crazy content with him. We have
Yeah, absolutely.
accidentally stumbling into the other tribe. We have waving the coconuts or husks around so fervently that they ignite. We
Now,
have inventing the split vote and no one wanting to listen. We have him not having a great premiere episode. Like, just a wild Survivor career that guy had.
yeah. Now I want to jump back just before we get into the mutiny. Or I guess no, it might be just after. I can't remember which episode it happened in, but before we get to the mutiny and we see players going home, I just want to give a quick mention to Christina,
Yeah,
because she was an interesting pre-merger, and that was one hell of a story just to be able to tell your tribe about. Yeah, we've seen lots of people, obviously Tony and Sarah being the two most famous ones that are law enforcement officers on this show, but the fact that she's wearing a necklace that is a bullet and you're thinking, okay, she's a recreational shooter. And no, she isn't, that she survived a gunshot wound in the middle of serving in police uniform. That was incredible.
yeah, that's awesome. Love that. That's such a cool story. I'm trying to think of who the first officer would have been. I think it would have been Jesse Camacho in
Yeah, in
Africa.
Africa.
Wow, I pulled that off the top of my head. I'm kind of proud of myself. But so, yeah, that was really cool. Such a great story. Love that from her. So glad they put that in the show. And
And now you wanted to bring it up.
I,
Ready to go to one of the most famous twists of all time?
yeah, I don't know what happened there. I got ahead of myself. I got the timeline mixed up.
That's okay.
So, and it's the moment is Probst off, and it's the only time we see this on camera. I have a story about a time it happened and they didn't show it in a second. I probably mentioned it on the show before.
Go ahead.
But Probst gives them the opportunity, hey, you have a chance to mutiny here. step forward if you want to leave your tribe and go to the other tribe. And no one steps forward at first.
Well, you got to take
Candace
time
steps
and eye
forward.
each other out.
Yeah, the kind of the stare down. Candace steps forward, and then Proke starts counting down from 10. And at 1, Jonathan Penner steps forward also. And kind of my thought here is Candace, it kind of made sense because, like, with new I2, she was kind of on the outs. Like, I didn't think she was in a great spot. Penner was not in any danger there, I don't think. What was his reasoning for doing this? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Um, I'll get back to that in a second, but we interrupt this programming just to make a shout out to our friend Kevin Oliver. Notre Dame has now tied the game.
I saw they were that only down 7. See, you told me before this we were recording that they were getting their butts kicked. And I thought it
Well,
would be
it
like
was
17-21. It was 10-0. That's not getting your butt kicked. That's still a close game.
yeah.
10 points is close.
Fair.
But
But no, you're right. I honestly think I'm gonna be, and I want to get into two things here, if you don't mind that we kind of go through both episodes at once, in a row, because I think that there's kind of a bit of two things going on here. I don't think it's a horrible strategy. I think Penner already knew he was working with Candace, so when she was gonna flip, it made sense. I think that Penner had a good relationship with Adam and Parvati from the beginning of the game. Where I think it did not end up working out is a couple of things. One, Ewell, and we'll talk about that move in a second because it's the not only the best move of the season, but one of the best moves in Survivor of this era. And also the twist. And this is what I wanted to get into is the next episode, we get into a twist that says you voted out one player, now vote out another that's in the bottle. And I think that's what really screws their chance is that by winning the fact that I2 won one challenge, it was like winning immunity twice.
yeah.
But otherwise, from a strategic point of view, I don't think it's horrible from Penner, especially when you look at the fact that, okay, Candace just walked. The I2-4 was probably closer to each other than they were to Penner. You've got to then ask yourself, if they lose a challenge, he's probably going home.
I don't know that him and Candace were as close as he thought they were, though.
You're right. I don't know if they 100% were, but I do know, or at least I get the sense that Penner was on the outs once Candace decided to mutiny.
Yeah. What no one
So,
and what nobody counted on was after the mutiny left 4 people on I2 that those 4 would then go on a winning streak and become the final 4.
and that's where I think that twist in a bottle really changed the game.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing here is I think that the mutiny might have also caused a benefit to strengthen I2 to a way in that they knew now the 4 that had to stay together.
Yeah, and I will say this just because we're talking about mutinies. You've heard me talk about this. I probably talked on the show. Johnny Fairplay on his podcast. I heard him say this that Probst offered a mutiny on Pearl Islands and no one took it.
Yeah,
But Fairplay was trying to get people to use it to force the merge and have everyone end up on one tribe. And
makes
like
sense.
I he's a
What
legend
I
of
really
the
want to
game.
know
I'm not
is
his biggest fan on Survivor, but that's
what
a
I would.
brilliant idea to try to use it to force the merge.
Oh, it is a brilliant idea. What I wonder, and you've said this, and I kind of thought of it after, and I'd love to know what Fairplay would think about this question. If he succeeded in forcing the merge, what would happen to the outcasts? Because
Ooh,
I'm assuming it was before. They would have had to just send them all home.
yeah. Again, get him on here. Let's talk about it. Get as many guests and former players on here as we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he has
Um,
his own show, so he probably wouldn't come on here.
yeah, probably not. That's a very good point. What was I gonna say also? The last thing, just while we're on the topic of the mutiny, I love the fact that they put this twist in this season. Um, as I'm sure some people in the audience have heard of, the mutiny on the Bounty is probably like the most historical event in the Cook Islands. So it really played a lot into the location and into the country that this twist was actually included in this season and not just in any random season.
And it makes sense that the other time they offered it was Pearl Island because that
Yeah,
was the pirate theme.
exactly.
So we should do more seasons like that, by the way, that aren't just like casting themes, but just like themed after things or people like pirates. Like
Yeah,
let's do a Viking themed season,
that
stuff
would be
like
fun.
that. I love that Pearl Islands just had their pirate stick and clung to it the whole time really well.
Yeah, and it worked out so well for that season because it was airing while Pirates of the Caribbean was in the theater.
And it's the only season that's kind of done that type of a theme. Any other look season that wasn't location themed before they did away with themes was a casting theme, like David versus Goliath, like heroes versus villains,
Yeah,
fans versus favorites. So, but yeah, the mutinies, and this mutiny is a turning point in the season for those two players, and both of their games are kind of downhill from here. Penner kind of does it to himself with another move that he makes, but and this is kind of what I was getting into with the mutiny with the auction. But once I2 goes on this winning streak we mentioned, the winner of the challenge each episode gets to send someone to Exile Island. They just start spamming the button to send Candace to Exile Island every chance they get,
yeah.
which
Which,
which I get it. She left you. Like
yeah, I
that's your
completely get
revenge
it.
for sure.
It makes perfect sense. It's kind of surprising because when she did leave, especially, but like, who would have? I mean, who would have thought that Ozzy would be basically Superman on this show? But also, who would have thought that because Ozzy was there, that I too would be able to just crush Roro in every challenge when you were kind of expecting Adam to be that, like, at least
Yeah.
able to give Ozzy a good fight.
And I will say, Ozzy basically is Superman in challenges and at camp. But I think the best, like Ozzy at his peak, is in South Pacific. And what I mean by South Pacific as a whole is a mid-tier season for me. But Ozzy combined with Redemption Island, you if they hadn't used it the season before, I would have sworn Redemption Island was invented for Ozzy based on how well he dominates it that season. Like it's
Yeah,
literally just camp and challenges. He doesn't have to play any strategic or social game. It's fantastic to watch.
yeah, you're absolutely right. And really, that's what he does every season he's on the show to different results.
Yeah. So he's a one trick pony. He just kind of becomes more arrogant and conceited each time he plays. But like, and again, game changers, I kind of just don't know what to do with him because they didn't show him very much. But from 13 to 16 to 23, he gets worse each time.
Yeah,
And by worse, I mean less likable, not necessarily a worse player.
true. All right, so we talked about at least what I was saying about the message in a bottle twist. But where did you want to go after that?
Um, what comes
Now I've
first, the auction or Jonathan Penner flipping back to I2 and just having everyone take off at him?
let me check.
Because those are the two that stick out. He kind of
Because
becomes
I'm just now confused. I should have called it like the pirate message twist or something. because now we're doing this podcast and I have Message in a Bottle by Taylor Swift stuck in my head.
Huh. But Penner kind of becomes the star of the post merge of the season because, and we'll get into it. I'll start with the auction first because I have less to talk about there. But
All
I
right.
talked about I2 kind of getting their revenge on Candace by continuously sending her to exile.
It's the same episode. So
Oh,
perfect.
wonderful. So the auction was first anyway. But
Yeah.
the Candace gets sent to exile during the auction, and Probst is like, yeah, well, at least Candace, you have a chance to find the idol. And Yule just goes, well, not really. I have it right here, which is fantastic TV. And if you're Candace, just kind of demoralizing, I assume. But so that's what came to my mind when you first mentioned Yule's idol, is him just pulling it out at the auction to say, no, there's not a chance she finds it on exile. But he also uses this idol at camp and shows it to Jonathan to win Jonathan's loyalty back to I2 to vote with the I2 4 at Tribal.
This is the move I was talking about.
Yeah,
That is just one of the best moves in Survivor that Ewell pulls off and allows him to win the game
yeah,
and allows Jonathan, who's an excellent player, who I know you and I, he's one of our favorites in this season. But Jonathan really loses the game for himself at this point because but with Ewell playing him here, he's decided to go back to I2 where he's still gonna go further than he probably would with Rero, but he's fifth. He's on the bottom of that tribe.
yeah, and it's
And if he was to vote, but now he's also not only has he mutinied on his tribe and gone back to them, but through the process of going back to them, he's basically mutinied on Rero.
and Rero takes it way worse than
Do they
I2.
ever?
And I will say, he ends up rejoining I2's voting, but other than Yule, I2 still doesn't completely trust him either.
Right.
Yule seems to, and Yule's the one calling the shots. But we
And
have like Parvati, I think, says that like just the sight of Jonathan's face. He's called Penner on every other season he plays. They call him Jonathan this season, so that's why I keep bouncing back and forth on what I call him.
that's
Because I'm
fine.
trying to call him Jonathan because that's what they call him this season, but I always call him Penner. But like Parvati says, like seeing Jonathan's face makes her want to throw up in a confessional, and we see a scene in some episode before she goes home of Candace like arguing with him, yelling at him on the beach. We have once Candace goes home, I think Adam and Parvati going to Yule and saying, if you don't vote him out this round and you're at the end, we're not voting for you if we're on the jury. Like Rero just goes full bitterness mode while they're still in the game. Not even bitter jurors, but wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's probably the era we were in at the time, more so than anything when we're watching this in what is now 2025,
Yeah.
almost 20 years after it first aired. God, I was in high school almost 20 years ago. This is sad.
You're old.
I know I am. But um at the same time, it's like that was Survivor back then. You had to manage the people side of the game a lot more than you did do today.
Yeah, for sure. People took things a lot more personally back then. That was just the game. That was old school Survivor.
And then we see it come really late up again the next day after this tribal when Parvati wins the award. And after seeing that the idol is already in Ewell's bag, sends Jonathan straight to Exile Island.
Yeah, there's like all those things I mentioned that happen. Those are like reactions to him from that tribal until he gets voted out. Like Rero's feelings on him only get stronger and get worse as time goes on.
Yeah.
So it was,
And this is
quite,
also the challenge where we get the family visit,
yes, it
where
was.
Parvati gets her father to come out to the Cook Islands.
Yes, fantastic.
Yeah,
I love family visit episodes. I'm sad we don't do that anymore.
same.
Bring it
I
back,
mean,
bro.
I get it, it's 26 days, but
I don't care. Bring it back.
I agree.
I mean, it's gonna have the same reaction whether it's 26 or 39. It's not like they're bringing them out on the last day.
Yeah.
I will say Australian Survivor brings loved ones and family out for final tribal for the winner reveal.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
At least the seasons I've watched did that. So, like after final tribal, they bring the people out to like hear the votes being read alongside their
I mean,
family finalists.
on the topic of Cook Islands, I cannot wait to watch Parvati play Australian Survivor sometime this year.
Yeah, and she's on Deal or No Deal Island right now and
Yep.
has already teamed up with one of Australian survivors.
And they're both on um, Australia Against the World together.
And Deal or No Deal Island, I think, was filmed before.
Yep,
So,
it was.
and I've seen this guy's first appearance. I think he becomes real popular through his second All Stars appearance. There was a real brief time, and I want to say 2021, when Australian Survivor was on Paramount Plus for like a month or two. It wasn't on there very long, but
Mm.
so yeah, shout out to Parvati. Can't wait to watch you play Australia versus World. Can't wait to keep watching you play Deal or No Deal Island because the
It was
first
a good episode for you in week one.
yeah, her and David from Australian Survivor having like this mom and dad vibe going is fantastic. And I will say, David, who's like known as the GOAT of Australian Survivor, and by a section of Twitter known as like the best Survivor player across any version, fanboying, in his own words, fanboying over Parvati, only confirms that if I'm ever on a show that she's on the cast of, I'm screwed.
Yeah,
I
we all
texted
are.
Kevin that while I was watching. I'm like, yeah, I'm done for. If I'm ever on a cast where like her people, like her or Rob, the first season of Deal or No Deal Island, there was this guy. He was a newbie to TV. His name is Aaron. That was kind of Rob's like sidekick the whole time. I feel like that would end up being me
Yeah.
with him
That's,
or
I guess,
Paul.
the one random advantage I have with someone like Parvati if they did say another fans versus favorites is she and I already know each other through an online course. So I could be like, hey, I know you. Let's work together.
Yeah, is that an advantage though, or does that put a target on you?
They don't know that,
Yeah, but when they see you guys working together,
I guess. You never know.
just and bringing it back to the topic of this episode, we get sidetracked a little bit on this show. Not near as bad as Pit Stop Pals does, but bringing it back to the topic of this show. Um, cool rewards. You're talking about going on rewards. Maybe on your season, your fans versus favorite season, you get this hot tub reward that Parvati gets
Yeah.
on Cook Islands
Yeah.
later in the game.
Parvati,
Her and
Ewell,
Yule and Ozzy.
and Ozzy win the overnight reward of the season.
Yeah,
Overnight rewards, I guess we did one in the sanctuary this year, but were such a big advantage at that time going into the final couple of days of the game.
yeah, and this was I think this is the round she ends up going home. But like she's
Yeah,
making
it is.
her, it's her and Adam are the only swapped raros left,
Yeah.
and she's making her case. And like you make a good point. She has a couple strategic moments. She's not just entirely flirt and sex appeal this season, but that's a strong majority of her game. Unlike I'm trying to think of how to describe this because like Micronesia heroes versus villains, the flirting and the like the smile and connecting with people is a part of her game for sure. but I feel like it's different. I feel like it's less developed in a way in Cook Islands, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But she turns that up to about 1,000 with Ozzy and Yule on that reward, trying to make her case to stay. Last ditch effort. Ends up not working, but she went down swinging for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, then after that, we really get into the finale.
Yeah, we do. And we have this is our first final three, but at four, we have a fire making, not because that's how Final Four works. That doesn't happen for another 22 seasons. We have a tie, which leads to the best slash worst fire making ever. I would argue best because it's the worst, because it's funny. It takes so long for either it's Becky versus Sandra. It takes so long for both of them to get a fire going.
Oh my god, I forgot
Probst
about this.
decides to give them matches, which I'm pretty sure is the only time that's happened.
Yeah, that is the only
You
time
know
that
how
that's happened.
Probst is, make everything like as hard and as raw as possible.
Yep.
But then they run out of matches. I mean, how do you do that? You have a certain number of matches and you run through all of them and still can't make a. I don't even think it was that windy or rainy or anything.
I think they just broke them.
It's insane. Becky somehow ends up winning, but like I have to give a shout out to that fire making competition. It's hilarious.
It is funny to watch. Just when you're seeing the like time tracker in the corner just keep building up and up and up. And usually this challenge is over in like 5 minutes.
Yeah. And the same way that 47's fire making was like the most exciting and most suspenseful and dramatic, skill wise, Cook Island still holds the record for just being the worst at pure fire making, but the best at comedy.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's, again, the only time I've seen it be so bad and take so long that props give matches, but then they go through all the matches. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, it is. And then at the same time, I don't know about you, but I didn't know who was going to win this game yet. I was still like, we need to see what the jury values in terms of those skill sets. But I also knew that this was all for naught because I knew that either you or Ozzy was going to win this game. So I'm
Yeah.
like, why are we still going from here? I was actually kind of hoping that Jeff would just send them both home.
So,
Which
yeah,
I honestly think sounds funny, but let's say Becky also ran out of matches. That could have happened.
I think it was close to happening. Sundra ran out. There's no way Becky wasn't close behind.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, is there anything from Final Tribal that sticks out to you? Oh,
Um,
quick, quick. I forgot to note something from the post merge.
yeah.
Henner gets voted out and says something about his hat that he forgot. So
Yeah.
the next tribal, Yule brings it, and before the jury comes in, puts it on the bench. None of the jury would have seen that was him.
Yeah.
Probst calls it out during question. He's like, "Oh, was that just pandering to the jury, sucking up?" Like Probst, nobody. Of course not. He never mentioned it to the jury. Nobody would have known it was him on the jury if you hadn't called attention to it. He looks like he's sucking up because you pointed it out, not because.
Yeah, you're right. Because how great would it have been if instead of Probst mentioning it, Penner stands up back when they did question and answers on the jury and said, "Who brought my hat?"
I mean, I could see him doing that. It's
Oh,
so
yeah, that would have been amazing television.
like, yeah. I just wanted to get that off my chest. Like, I don't like the way Probst just is like, "Hey, you did this. Are you pandering to them?" That put you in kind of a weird spot. As funny as it was.
Yeah, it absolutely did.
So
Um, Go ahead.
back to Final Tribal.
Yeah, Final Tribal. I guess a couple of things here. I think Ewell had a great performance. He really explained his strategy. Um, Ewell was very well spoken. The way that he presented himself, I thought he was the odds-on favorite to win, but I
Yeah.
expected Ozzy to get some votes, which we see is true. Ewell won this by one vote, so it was close. Um, Going into Ozzy's speech, this I really liked. And I love that Ozzy didn't say get hostile with production over the twist or with any other players, but really used this as an opportunity to explain how the game started and that he presented himself as um how all the positive aspects that he can use Survivor as an opportunity to demonstrate to the broader public about Mexican Americans.
Yeah. I
I
think
thought that was very well done from Ozzy's part too, especially when you come in and look at how well Oz and how passionate Ozzy was about representing Latino Americans when he says right before Final Tribal Council, I'm a surfer dude going up against two lawyers. And it's
yeah.
like, you are, and he almost won.
Yeah, I agree with you. At this point, Becky was kind of irrelevant. By the time Final Tribal came, she didn't have a shot.
Yeah.
The two people that were fighting for the win both put up incredible performances at Final Tribal. But at the end of the day, it's a social experiment, and it's odd. And Yule just had a better strategic and social game than Ozzy did. Ozzy's game was just kind of one dimensional.
Yeah.
And it becomes more one dimensional the next two seasons he plays.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Anything you remember from final that you wanted to bring up?
not really, other than just they both put up good performances.
And we didn't have a Curran this season, but Ozzy wins player of the season voted on by the fans and therefore gets a car from that.
They
So
need to
once
bring that
again,
back.
oh, do they ever?
Also,
How
they
did
should have brought the car back during Ghost Island.
I was just gonna say that.
I've said it before and I'll keep
Oh
saying
yeah.
that whole season was about fixing past mistakes. Why not reference the car curse again?
Imagine if Final Five there was just a physical car sitting on Ghost Island.
Yeah, that's when you throw the challenge because nobody that had won the car ever won the
No,
game.
but if they didn't even know,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
just someone, hey, you're sent to Ghost Island, and you get there, and there's a brand new car sitting on
At
the
that point,
island.
I'm just like, well, at least I got the car. I'm not winning the game
Yeah,
apparently,
I
but
told you I'm podcasting, Spencer Campbell. My friend, I texted him. I told him I'm podcasting when he called me in the middle of the call, in the middle of our podcast. He called back 20 minutes later. Come on.
that's funny.
Happens every podcast now. Sorry,
This
my
happened when
distraction.
we were doing the cast reveal for
And
Roundtable
it
Talk also.
and it happened 4 times during New Generation Challenge podcast.
That's incredible. Shout out to Spencer. He's gotten a bunch of name mentions on reality one shows. Hasn't happened on this show before also. But does he know he's doing it?
No.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. But no, any other closing thoughts from this season before we get into a line, blindside, and first boot?
No, I'm ready to go there.
Okay, I will give you the probably three most iconic players to come from this season.
All right.
You've got Parv, you've got Jonathan. I called him the right nickname that time. Well, name, I guess. And you've got Yule. So
All
two
right.
winners and Penner, basically.
First boot you all. That's easy. I
Yeah.
don't want to sit next to him. Um, I'll align with Penner. I think it would be very. He would be very good to go up if you rub people the wrong way. I don't think he necessarily would, but it would be relatively balanced.
I think he
I'm gonna,
could because he's a great player, but he has that effect on at least a few people every season
yeah,
he plays.
I'm gonna say that leads me to blindside Perf. I know her from an course, like I said, we would know each other early on a first name basis. So I don't think, seeing that she's a past winner, that she would hold it against me if I blindsided her in a good move.
Yeah, and I'm taking this into account as not just the versions of them on Cook Islands, but their whole
Yeah.
careers.
Oh, of course.
Ewell, I think, is the clear first boot. That guy's just, he's strategic and he's quiet, and if I'm not careful, he'll get me.
Yep.
I mean, Par's the same way. She could suck me into, as I said, like suck me in and bite my head off pretty
Yeah.
easily. I'm gonna align with Penner because, like I said, it's not to the level of like hate and disdain that people had for him on Cook Islands. But you look, he comes back Micronesia, him and Suri get into an argument. You look when he comes back his third season in what's it called? Philippines. Jeff Kent has it out for him for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Like there just always seems to be one or two people that don't like him. I'm gonna align with him and go to the end and hope those people are on the jury and hope they're persuasive jurors with the rest of the jury. But
Okay.
also I just love Penner. I think he's a great player. So like
Yeah.
he can get to the end and he's hilarious. He's one of my favorite confessionalists. So just being able to spend that time talking to him would be awesome.
True.
And I'm gonna blindside Parvati, and I usually do this when she's in this game, so I can use this line. With winners at war, Denise took out Sandra and became the Queen Slayer. In my opinion, Parvati is the greatest of all time. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna become the Goat Slayer.
Nice. So I thought Sandra Diaz Twine was the goat slayer. Bad joke.
Yeah.
Different
Well, they
kind of
ended up
goat.
not doing it though, because and Malcolm says we didn't kill the goat's mother because we had a heart, but
Yeah.
Sandra wanted to.
Um.
Gosh, this is the most we've ever referenced Game Changers on one episode, and it's not even a Game Changers themed episode.
Yeah, we need to do one of those at some point because you know I'm a big fan of Sarah's game in that season.
Yeah.
So I've told you about how I think there's some great pre-merge characters in this season.
Oh
So
boy.
my aligned blindside first boot is going to be Cook Island's pre-merge players:
Yes, give him to me. Give me who I want.
Christina, Cowboy, and Sekou.
I got Cowboy. I'm gonna align with him. That dude. I'm not convinced whether he does or doesn't have the gameplay ability to get to the end of the game,
Yeah,
but he like I said, his time on this show is just awesome. It seems like a fever dream. I want to spend time around that dude, if for no other reason. We're gonna have fun.
touchdown Notre Dame.
Nice. Blues are up 6-2 early in the third. So
Nice.
unless our defense and goalie just completely collapse, we should be good. But I don't want to first boot Sekou again, so I'm gonna blindside him and first boot Christina. But
Nice.
I and again, I don't know how good of a player he is or isn't, but I just yeah, spending time with Cowboys seems like a
I
blast.
mean, it's a pre-merge um ally blindside first boot, so it's not like you're going to get any great players to go to the end of the game with.
We've
So I like
seen
that.
some great players go pre-merge, or some pre-mergers come back and go really far though.
Oh, we have
So
Wentworth.
yeah. Jeremy didn't go pre-merge his first season, but he went
Yeah.
early merge.
I mean, it'll never happen, but I really want Anna to get another chance.
Yeah.
Moving on to mine, I am going to swap two players on yours. I'm also going to first boot Christina here, just
Yeah.
by nature if I have to, but I'm going to ally with Sekou and blindside Cowboy. I just think Cowboy would be a really fun juror.
True.
So that's the only rationale.
So we're both making our cowboy decision based off of what we would find fun. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Well, this was a really fun episode, dude.
That sure was.
Check out other Reality Realm content. Pit Stop Pals. We're in January Madness right now, which is just tournaments we're doing of what players
Nice.
we like best from our rewatches. Roundtable Talk will be coming at you. I don't know what day of the week. We need to decide when we're recording this week, but that'll be
Yeah.
coming at you.
Yeah. And the final just happened in the Challenge 40 Battle of the Eras. It's over. I will not say anything until we get to that show. I don't quite know when our final recap's going to be filmed because TT is having a vacation right now. Lucky her. But once she gets back, we'll do that. We have the final for 40 coming. We're going to podcast after the reunion show. And then we also have the cast reveal coming for All Stars 5. All Stars 5 Rivals, return of Ashley Mitchell to the Challenge World. I
I,
cannot wait.
I'm excited for All Stars Rivals, and I might be in the minority on this. I don't know. I feel like you're going to disagree with me, but like Mark Long inventing All Stars was kind of to have his show for like the older people and the OGs.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like I'm kind of not the Ashley fan anyway that you are, but I don't like that a lot of these like newer players are starting to come onto All Stars now because I don't feel like that's what All Stars is. I
Yeah,
like.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I don't quite get where they're going. We'll see.
I thought you'd
At this
disagree with me because you're not as connected to all the older seasons.
That's it. I'm not as connected to the older seasons, so like to see am I gonna get that annoyed to see some of these newer players like I don't know what Saya Corey Lay has done to be an all-star or Nicole Zanetta, but
Nothing.
will I watch them? Yes.
Oh, I'm still gonna watch it. I just don't like the like do this as a season on the regular show at that point.
Yeah.
Like why are we taking up an All Star season for this?
I'm sure it has something to do with just some
Sure.
players saying I'll do a month, but I'm not doing three.
Fair enough.
But
Well,
no, we're gonna do those three episodes as our next three, and then All Stars 5 itself will begin at the end of the month.
nice.
So will TT and I will be back into another season now that 40 is over. But if you're at all a challenge fan and you haven't seen the final of 40 yet, my God, watch it. It is such a good final, such a painful ending, but it
And
was fun. It was fun. It was a great season. And we're glad that TT and I have started a new show off that on Reality Realm.
I'm sad that they're not doing another USA this summer.
Yeah, same.
And they pulled it off of Paramount Plus too, so now they're just erasing it from existence.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, we've done all our advertisements. Check out the Reality Realm merch store on Redbubble. Grab
Yep.
your torches and head back to camp. Bye, everyone.
Good night.